Welcome back to another edition of New York Got Game. It's your boy Dexter Henry. We are 6 games into the NBA season for the New York Knicks. It's been a little up and down. Knicks have won 3, they've lost 3. Some people have been ready to jump off the ledge. Hopefully on this episode, we'll try to give you a pretty good assessment of where the Knicks are after 6 games. Again, just a small sample size into the season, but we've got a great guest. So let's get right into it. So the Knicks, they're back at home at the Garden after they kicked off a season-long 7-game homestand on Sunday, but they did hit some early turbulence this year. After starting the year 2-0, they are now 3-3. So the major question on the minds of Knicks fans is this: is this a small sample stumble, or is it something more concerning? To answer that question and more, joining me to break it all down, from Mike Brown's system to the bench rotation and defensive breakdowns, is my guy, the great film guru, Benjamin Ritholz from Knicks Film School. You guys know him as Benji, and he joins me now. Benji, what's going on, man? How you doing?
I'm doing great, Dex. It's always great to be with you, and excited to talk about a team with a new look and some new ideas. Looking forward to it.
No, I'm excited to talk about this. Have a nuanced discussion about this, where we're not going to jump out the window here. Like, we're not going to do that here for this show. But Benji, here we are. We are 6 games in. As I said, Knicks have a record of 3-3. What's been the biggest difference between the team that we saw open the season 2-0 and the team we've seen recently since then going 1-3?
I don't think it's been such a drastic difference, to be honest with you. I think a lot of it has to do with shot making. You know, the team is shooting so many threes that you are a little bit subject to the variance of three-point shooting, so you can go hot and you can go cold. I think had the shooting been a little bit more evenly dispersed through these games, I think you're probably looking at a 4-2 record and less panic. So I think, you know, it is a team adjusting to a new system. I think that's been clear through every single game and spurts of every game that you've watched. There are quarters where they look great. There are halves and quarters where they look like they're figuring it out. So I wouldn't say there's been a noticeable difference to me in terms of like the quality of play and the quality of the team from the 2-0 start to now. I think it's been generally a team just trying to find its way.
So I agree with you, right? And you and I were talking about a little bit this before we decided to start recording, right? The process for me still looks good, right? It's particularly on offense, which is what everybody generally likes to focus on. But still, you're going to have people that are going to call this a slow start. So let's say we call this a slow start at 3-3. Let's say we say that. It sounds to me like what you're saying is a lot of this slow start feels like a team that's just adjusting to Mike Brown's system versus, as some fans have put it, a deeper issue with the roster. You don't see it as a deeper issue with this roster, correct?
No, it's a really good roster. It's a roster that's going to win a lot of regular season games. I don't think there's any doubt about that once they find their flow. I do think the depth is improved from last season, but that's not to say that the team doesn't have some flaws that it had last season and it still has this season. And the players within this roster that were here last year have many of the same flaws that they had last year that they have now. And it's not a perfect roster, but it's a very, very good one. I think it is a roster that is built to win. I think it can do that at a very high level, both in the regular season and in the playoffs. And it's just really a matter now of finding their rhythm. Mike Brown is playing with rotations. He's playing with lineups. He's playing with different bench configurations, 9-man rotation, 10. He went to an 11 in the first game. So it's all going to sort itself out here as Brown, to his credit. I think this is what people wanted out of this new coach in comparison to the last one. A little bit more experimentation in early season. Let's figure out what we have, what lineups work, what types of plays work, what defensive system works. He's playing around a little bit. That's not always going to translate immediately to wins. The goal is that it translates later in the season. The team solidifies an identity and now can go out and win some games when it really matters late.
I agree with you 100%, but I know you've seen this too, Benji. You still got some Knicks fans saying, oh, I want Tibbs back. We had somebody in our live show the other day said they want a refund on the coaching hire, right? They want Tibbs back. But you're right, when you change things and it's new, and I like the experimentation. This is the time. This is what the regular season is for, when you have a roster as talented as they have, to try to experiment and find things. So with all that being said, there are some Knicks fans, Benji, who are concerned after 6 games. Do you think fans should be concerned about this 500 start, or are there foundational things that you've seen in the film that says the process is good? This is just some early season noise. Like, let's see if this team can stick with what they're doing.
Yeah, I think exactly right, Dex. I think there are foundational things and differences you're seeing that you would have wanted to see entering the season with this new system and this new coach. They are generating more threes and better threes than they did last year. Now, you are subject to some variance when you shoot a lot of threes, but I don't think anybody would question that this team needed to shoot more considering the quality of shooters that they have. Karl Towns' three-point rate is way up. Jalen Brunson's three-point rate is way up. That's due to the increased pace, the increased ball movement. Jalen Brunson playing off the ball more, getting more catch and shoot opportunities. We're seeing Mikal Bridges as more of a playmaker, had 9 assists tonight. So that's obviously come to that's an idea that's kind of come to fruition that he needs to have the ball a little bit more to play make. So the pace is up. That's one thing that was promised. The three-point rate is up. That's another thing that was promised. The ball movement's better. The assist rate is up. That's a lot of good signs. The shots are going to start to go down because the quality of shooter on this team is very high. So yes, I think foundationally the process has looked good. There are quarters and halves where it's slowed down and they've gone away from what Mike Brown is trying to preach and maybe reverted back to habits that they're trying to break. But that's all part of the process. Foundationally, this is exactly the type of start you wanted to see from this offense. The principles are starting to manifest as the offense gets going.
Some of it does come down to shot making, right? Because the Knicks offense through the first 5 games were in the high 20s. That is where they were ranked in terms of offensive rating, and you will see where it is after Sunday night when we look at some of the data. But that's going to go up as they start to make shots. And you mentioned the P word that's been used all offseason long. That's pace, right? And I think there's a lot of things people think about pace a lot about the moving up fast up and down the court, but a lot of it has to do with ball movement, even in the half court. And Mike Brown's talked about this, Benji, right? He's talked about pace and ball movement being crucial for this team. You're watching the film here, when you look at the film, what are you seeing particularly, like specifically in the offense, that you like about how it's flowing through Jalen Brunson and Karl-Anthony Towns when they're on the floor? What do you like about what you're seeing thus far?
I like the way they're interacting more frequently, and it's not simply through like a static pick and roll where defenses know how to handle that. They're probably going to switch that because they'll put their two best wing defenders on Brunson and Cat so that they can switch it. We saw with Tibbs, he had to almost go away from that action because of the easy switchability of it. And now you're not having your two best players interact. The whole purpose of Jalen Brunson and Karl-Anthony Towns together on a team is that they should interact all the time offensively and make defenses make tough decisions. What you're seeing with this increased pace, whether it's a slot to slot flip where Brunson brings the ball up, will pitch it back to Towns. And that's an interaction that makes the defense make a decision without a static pick and roll. Or Brunson comes down the floor, dumps it to Cat at the elbow, and then runs off of him for either a DHO or a fake, a dribble handoff or a fake, and now Karl-Anthony Towns is a driver. So it's less kind of static pick and roll between those two, but because of the pace that they're playing with, they're interacting early in a possession, making defenses make tough decisions, and then taking advantage. Both of them are such good drivers of the basketball. So I like what we're seeing in terms of the increased interaction between Towns and Brunson. And like more generally, just the increased pace off of rebounds, especially Towns outlet passes to Brunson, that's creating so many good threes in the open court. And then if the defense gets pushed down through that pace, it's a pitch back to Towns at the top of the key as a trailer, and we know how devastating he is in that position, whether it's shooting the three or a pump fake, and he's driving and he's getting two and then probably an and one.
Yeah, I've been loving that. I don't mean this. The follow up I'm going to have here to your points there, Benji, is any shade towards Tom Thibodeau. But when you're looking at this offense right now, and it has not been great, right, just because of the shot making, we haven't seen been great until Sunday night against the Bulls. But does this offense does it not feel just more modern to you? That's just simply how I could put it, but it just feels more modern.
No, exactly right. It does feel modern. It's where the league is going. Um, Look, the Knicks would go through games shooting 26, 27 threes in a game. And that's just the math starts to get really difficult. Now, the Knicks did an amazing job. And like, this is not, Tibbs did an amazing job with this team. I'm a firm believer that Tibbs did a great job. I believe that he played a certain style that worked for this team for a long time. But I do think it kind of needed to enter the modern era. And that's what Mike Brown is doing. Now, what's yet to be seen is that when you play this style and you are running up and down like this, now you play a team like the Bulls, who on Friday night just ran it back down the Knicks' throats, and the Knicks weren't prepared to face that kind of pace. They're not used to playing that pace the way the Bulls are. So it is an adjustment. Defensively, like everyone talks about pace on offense. When you play with pace on offense, you also have to play with pace on defense. We actually saw in the first quarter tonight, Mikal Bridges had to yell at his teammates, hey, we're running up and down on offense, but if you don't get back, they're just going to get three when we get two, right? Like you end up losing that way. So there's a discipline you have to play with even when you play with pace. And I think that's probably some of the reason Tibbs didn't want to play that way. And it's up to the Knicks to reach that standard where, okay, we want to run up and down on offense. We better get back and make sure we're guarding teams that want to do the same thing to us. That's going to be a key in terms of like really turning this system into a positive one for this team.
Yeah, I love that you talked about that in terms of pace on defense. I think that gets ignored quite often when we talk about basketball. And there's two sides to the game here. I want to talk to you a little about the bench unit, Benji, because this was supposed to be a strength this season. Nick supposedly upgraded the bench. But so far, they've struggled to generate points, and a little bit of me saying that is also rhythm, right? Because there's been some guys out. Mitchell Robinson, even though he's projected to start, has played limited minutes, and then Deuce McBride was out for a little bit, and Gershon Yabusele. What stands out to you right now about the second unit's play? Like, what do you think about it? They've definitely struggled offensively, but what catches your eye when you talk about the bench unit for the Knicks right now?
Well, I'll tell you, like, this conversation is different tonight than it would have been, Friday night because they had their best game by far against the second game against the Bulls where Shamet, Clarkson, McBride all put points on the board. Josh Hart had his best game of the season by a long shot. So it seems like hopefully they're coming into their own as a unit. I think Brown is playing with a bunch of combinations too. Like Kolek started the season. I didn't love the idea of having him in a backcourt with Tyler Kolek and Jordan Clarkson together. That's a very small, defensively challenged lineup. Kolek, unfortunately, now has taken a back seat, but I like the look of Deuce McBride with Clarkson, kind of the stout ball control guard who can shoot threes with Clarkson, who could be a little bit helter-skelter, but we know can generate buckets like he did tonight. And then, look, Yabusele has been a disappointment. You got to be honest about it. He's been their worst rotation player, I think, by a long shot. His minutes are now getting cut. And it's going to be interesting to see. We had a lot of expectations for him as kind of a versatile 4 or 5. I think he came into camp a little bit heavy. He has to work himself into shape now, unfortunately. So we're going to see how that works out. But I do think it's been a bit of an inconsistent who gets time and the lineups that they've been playing with. They're hopefully settling into that now. And tonight was a great step in the right direction with all these wings that can surround Brunson and Towns, kind of interchangeable wings coming in and out of the game, making shots and playing good defense.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Yabusele, too, because I was going to ask you. I thought he looked, even when you watch him, I watched him play a little bit in Eurobasket. He's looked a little bit heavier to start the season than he was. How long from your estimation, how long do you think it will take for him to get back into playing shape? Because getting into, and we're talking about basketball shape, to play NBA games, right? Not the same as practicing of that nature, but is this something where we could see, towards the end of this month as we get past Thanksgiving, that he could be back in shape and looking a lot better like the player many of us expected him to be in this rotation?
Yeah, I mean, they have a couple of long breaks in this season. It's kind of a schedule quirk. Like they play tomorrow night and then Wednesday and then have another 3 days off. So I think to his benefit to like really get in the gym over those course of those days what they have off, get in the gym, just run, man. Like it's gonna take a couple months probably to get where he needs to be. The good news is it's the beginning of the season. This is not the first player to come into camp out of shape, and it won't be the last. Guys can get there over the course of a year. And to the Knicks, the benefit the Knicks have is if Mitch is around, they can play with Mitch and Cat at center. Even OG Anunoby occasionally, Huck Porty can provide some late bench depth if you need it. So it probably provides the luxury for Yabusele to have the time to get into shape before he starts logging the regular minutes the Knicks hope he can. But man, this is a guy who, like we saw in the Olympics, throw down over LeBron James. He's always been a big dude, but he can get off the floor. He hasn't looked like a guy who has any lift at all since he came to the Knicks. That's going to have to change. He cannot be effective as a ground-bound 6'8" center, even if he makes threes. That's not going to cut it. He can't stay in front of Kevin Huerter on a drive. On Friday night, he got burned on a right-hand drive by Kevin Huerter, who has no speed whatsoever. So he's going to have to get to a place where he can be a little bit switchable and can get some lift off the ground to be an effective NBA player. I do think it can happen over the course of a couple months.
Yeah, definitely can, and the Knicks are going to need him, especially for what they hope to accomplish with him off the bench, so we'll see if that happens. Now, Benji, you talked about the defense, and Mike Brown called out the defense of this team after the Bulls lost on Halloween. He also said he wanted to see this team play a full 48 minutes. We saw that on Sunday, at least close to it. Maybe not a full 48, but it was somewhat close to it against the Bulls in the rematch on Sunday. So when you break down the tape, What defensive principles are the Knicks failing to execute consistently on defense? And I do say this with a caveat and have an asterisk because the Knicks are in the top 10 in terms of defensive rating. So they have played good defense in spurts, but you also have seen breakdowns at times like you saw in the first matchup against the Bulls, particularly in the last couple of minutes of that game in the first half. What are you seeing with them on defense that you like or don't like right now?
So yeah, some of it is what we already talked about, Dex. Like when you play with pace, you don't get back, and it's not just getting back one on one with your matchup. Most teams are tough in transition. You talk about a Giannis Antetokounmpo, of course, with Milwaukee. You talk about Josh Giddey with Chicago. If you don't build a little bit of a wall, that means having multiple guys back to wall off a drive. You're going to give up a lot of points in transition. A driver, Karl-Anthony Towns goes to the rim. He's often behind the play. If everyone's not sprinting back to prevent the counterattack, as it were, you're in big trouble. And I just think the Knicks have to get used to, again, playing with pace and then getting back with pace. You have to be able to counter on defense as well. The other thing I would say is just like Friday night, Mikal Bridges got blown by like 6 times straight point of attack. Like he just needs to be better. This was the case last year as well. I think Mikal's had a great year so far. He looks like a different player. But defensively, if the Knicks want to get where they want to go, Mikal Bridges needs to be a top wing defender. If he's getting blown by Pat Williams and by Josh Giddey, Knicks can't guard well enough to win a lot of games. Like that is he is an important defensive player for them. He needs to play up to his standard. Karl-Anthony Towns at the five. Unfortunately, this is a constant problem. But like second quarter, even tonight, when the Bulls got back in the game, he's just a mess in the pick and roll. Doesn't know whether to switch, doesn't know when he's in drop, he's in a soft drop. So that's always an issue, but he's got to be better. I'm a little surprised Mike Brown hasn't experimented a little bit more with heavy switching, and we haven't played any zone yet. And I thought that's something he might bring because he did play some zone with Sacramento. Maybe he's just slowly going to build up the system. Maybe this is just kind of his starting point, and we're going to see more as we go. But I do like about the defense and what I think has allowed them to be, as you said, in the top 10, OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges off the ball are allowed to roam and make plays. I think they have a lot. They've been empowered to a level they weren't under Tibbs to be aggressive, to take risks. And those guys can, when they're allowed to wreak havoc off the ball, can force a lot of turnovers. We're seeing OG make a lot of plays just like that. So I like the principle of allowing them a little more freedom. I just think the team needs to, again, find exactly what scheme they want to play and then make sure they're getting back and stopping ball. That's the first step to any good defense.
Yeah, got to stop the ball. Got to stop that point of attack, too. You mentioned Mikal Bridges there. That's important. Now, when you talk about this Knicks team, you talk about defense. And we know this, Benji. The Knicks' two best players are also the weakest defenders in Jalen Brunson and Karl-Anthony Towns. So, and you talked about, you kind of just mentioned this in the last answer, like you know a lot of the limitations, I will say, that we've seen with Cat, right, over time. And some of it annoys the fan base. It's maddening. I get all of that. But I guess when you're looking at these players in the system is what can both of those players, Cat and Brunson, do better to help the team defensively? And do you believe that they can improve in Mike Brown's system over the course of the season? Do you think that's actually possible?
I do, and part of it is, and this is something Mike Brown obviously believes in because he wanted to start the year this way, is playing Cat more at the four. So Mitchell Robinson allows you to do that, and I like how they've looked defensively in that alignment. It just solves a lot of problems. Cat is actually very capable, and it's something he showed in Minnesota with Rudy Gobert. Against good fours, against talented fours, quick fours, he can guard those guys one-on-one. When Cat really struggles is when he's put into kind of pick and roll actions as the five, trying to navigate and figure out what he needs to do, whether it's to switch or whether it's to stay home. He gets burned a lot in those scenarios. So look, playing at the four is going to help. I think Mike Brown's going to have to build out a little bit more of his defense. Can I hide him in zone? Can I blitz the ball a little bit more and allow him to just blitz? Ball gets out of the point guard's hand. Now he can retreat as opposed to having to guard in front in a drop defense, which is where he struggles. So I think there are ways to help Cat. I think Mike Brown will start to build all those out. As for Brunson, look, he's working hard out there. He always works hard out there. He's going to draw his share of offensive fouls. Those are helpful. The times that he struggles, and this is something that the Bucks did to him a lot, is if he's guarding, let's say, a AJ Green on the Bucks, that guy will screen for Giannis. Obviously, Brunson can't switch onto Giannis. That puts the Knicks in all sorts of problems. So nothing you can really do about that. Jalen Brunson is a 6-foot guard. He's a limited defensive player. He has to keep working hard. He has to keep drawing his share of fouls. And then, look, you got to scheme around it. Again, whether that's playing a little bit more zone to help hide a guy. I think the Knicks should employ some zone defense. I'm surprised Brown hasn't done that yet. We'll see if it comes out at all. The other thing I want to say about Towns is his rebounding has been unbelievable. And there's no defensive possession without a defensive rebound at the end. So, as limited as he is as a pick and roll defender, his rebounding makes up for some of it. And man, has his defensive rebounding this year been exceptionally good. So I do want to shout him out for that.
No, he's been an elite defensive rebounder thus far this year. Numbers reflect that for sure there. So I know good answers about that with Cat and also Brunson. I want to talk to you specifically about a few players here, Benji, before we wrap, because I want to start with Mitchell Robinson. You mentioned him just in the last question I asked you about Cat and Brunson. But how much has the center's load management approach, right, or the team's load management approach with him, we'll call it that, with his ankle injury, impacted the interior defense and rebounding structure? Because we know about Mike Brown wanting to go with the double big lineup. We know he wants to see more of Cat at the 4, but we haven't seen much of that, right, except for the previous 2 games before us recording this. So how much of that has hurt the potential of how much better we can see the Knicks be on defense?
I mean, there's no question. Mitchell Robinson is either their best or what? Well, OG's probably their best defender. He might be second best, Mitch. He might be third best, but he's one of their best 3 defenders on the roster. I mean, simple as that. And as a rim protector, as a guy who forces turnovers with his huge arms, the guy can be a difference maker on that end. It's not just that he hasn't played every game. It's that we have, even with what we've seen of him, he is not near his peak right now. And that makes sense. Probably just not in perfect shape, isn't playing a ton of minutes, is managing his workload. So it's a tough thing. Like, I think they're right to be careful with him. Most important is that they have him down the stretch into the playoffs. So I get it. He's a guy that's never really played a full season healthy. So you have to just kind of understand that and then manage it accordingly. The difficulty is, can we get him at peak shape and playing with his best rhythm? Because he's not there right now. It's not even close. And like, you're seeing him miss dunks on offensive rebounds. You're seeing him foul guys that normally he would just, stuff, right? Like, he's just a step behind. That's the challenge. So it's going to be tough. Like, I understand the load management, but at the same time, when you're doing that and now he's not the player he's supposed to be, well, what are you really accomplishing? It's a tough balance that the Knicks are going to have to try to strike.
Yeah, they're going to have to try to figure that out. And it's, when is he going to be at his peak, right, where he's healthy and also in rhythm with the team? That's a tough thing to balance through the season. I think something to watch with the Knicks for sure. I also want to talk to you about Josh Hart, because he is, and there's a couple things now here with Hart, because he told the Post that he's not considering surgery and that he's still adjusting to his role. And then before Sunday's game against the Bulls, he told The Athletic that he's got a nerve injury in his hand. Do you think not having surgery, which Josh Hart has said he doesn't want to do you think that's the right move for him and the team? And what do you see on film about how he's faring in his new role off the bench under Mike Brown? I also say this with a caveat, because Josh Hart was really struggling until Sunday's game against the Bulls. He had his best performance, all-around performance, I would say, of the season thus far. So maybe he is getting a little bit more comfortable with the hand injury, and I think it's somewhat of a concern with the nerve damage there. But what do you think about him not getting surgery, and what have you seen about how he is faring in the new role, or think that he can fare as he gets more comfortable here under Mike Brown?
Yeah, I hesitate to like comment on the surgery. I don't know what that surgery looks like. I don't know how long he would be out for. I just know very little information about it. I'm going to take the training staff and him at his word that this is the right course of action. I'm just going to judge what I'm watching. And what I'm watching is a guy who has no clue where to be within the system yet, and maybe just started to find it a little bit tonight, but otherwise has just been totally lost. And again, it makes sense. This is a guy who didn't play a preseason game under a brand new coach with a brand new system. It's hard to just like plug in and figure out how to play a brand new style. Like, that is just a hard thing. So it would be silly to expect him to look like he plugs right in, especially because we know Josh Hart is a bit of a complicated piece in the fact that he's not really a shooter, and he's a kind of a strange hybrid guard forward who doesn't shoot threes. So he has to find his role. What I do like is they're starting to use him more as a screener, especially when he plays with Cat or with Yabusele, who can stretch the floor. Let Josh Hart be the guy setting screens, rolling, staying in that dunker spot where his lack of shooting becomes less of a concern. Defenses can't play off to the same extent. I like that. And then look, a lot of Josh Hart's impact comes from the plays that are just like outside of the system. It's crashing a board and making a crazy offensive rebound. It's saving a ball from out of bounds out of nowhere and prolonging a possession. Like those stuff have nothing to do with the system. And until tonight, Josh Hart wasn't really making a lot of those plays. He made them tonight. That's when Josh Hart makes a big difference. So it's figuring out the system and then it's making the plays outside of the system. That's going to help Josh Hart along, assuming the hand is okay, which again, I'm going to assume this is the course of action that's necessary and that's best for him and for the team. And we'll see how it goes.
We will see how it goes. Good start on Sunday night against the Bulls. Josh Hart with a strong game there. Last thing for me here, Benji, because let's just look ahead to the remainder of this 7-game homestand where the Knicks, look, they're home for 7 games. You talked about they have some gaps early on in their schedule. They have a chance to feast here a little bit, improve that record, maybe get people off the panic train just a little bit. But what's the one area on either end of the floor that has to turn around for the Knicks to settle in and find consistency? Because I think that's what everybody's looking for, right, at this point. How are they adjusting to this new system with Mike Brown, and how do they find consistency? So for you, what's that one area on offense or defense that's got to turn around for the Knicks here?
Man, I mean, I think it's a lot of what we talked about. I think it's stopping the ball. I think it's containing the basketball defensively, and maintain and able to. You have to be able to play with pace, but then defend with pace as well. If that to me, if they can do that, I really believe that the offense is going to come around on its own. It's already succeeding to a large extent. The shots are going to start falling. Like I just like what I've seen offensively. Defensively, I know the numbers are there, but I don't know if the process has really been there. I do want to see them contain the ball a little bit more. I'd like to see them a little bit more diverse schematically. Run some different coverages. Let's start building this out, and so that we're able to play in different ways with different lineups. If they could start doing that over the course of the 7-game homestand, I think they're going to rattle off some wins because I do think this was the start of a big offensive outburst for this team.
Yeah, I think so. Listen, all the fans are hoping for that. The offense is it's funny. I know it's been in the 20s. I'm not as worried about that because the shots are going to fall. The defense, which I said, Benji, I thought this defense could be a top 8 to 10 defense this year. That's kind of one of my bolder predictions. But I do want to see a little more diversity like you. I would like to see some more blitzing against some elite ball handlers. And, yeah, a little bit of zone I think could help too. So we'll see. Look, we've only watched film for 6 games. We've got a lot more film to watch with the Knicks. I know you'll be watching it with what you do with KFS. That is Benjamin Ritholz. Check him out at Knicks Film School. Does a fantastic job there. Benji, I always appreciate you coming on New York Got Game to, give us some insight and some, not just all positivity, but some nuance, some nuance to this, just some nuance. So everybody doesn't jump off the ledge. That's what we needed here. That's all.
That's it. Some perspective. Dex, always a pleasure, man. Love coming on with you. Love talking and catching up. All the best, man.
Thank you, my friend. Okay, so the Knicks will continue their 7-game homestand this week. 1 down. They've got 6 more to go. 3 coming up this week. They've got the Wizards coming in on Monday evening. Then they have the Timberwolves, Julius Randle, Dante DiVincenzo back in town on Wednesday evening. And then they have a little bit of a break till they play the Nets for the first time this season next Sunday. So very interesting. Now, we've talked about this a lot in New York Got Game. We've talked about it on the live shows, the watch-alongs, and some fans are not happy with what they've seen thus far this season through 6 games. But I do think everyone can just relax a little bit. Look, you can look back to last year. The Knicks got blown out by 30 points in their first game of the season against the Boston Celtics, and it was doom and gloom. They didn't play good against the Celtics during the season. They did not play good against the Cleveland Cavaliers, right? This team still ended up in the Eastern Conference Finals. You could even look at how they did in their first 11 games last year. They were 5-6, under 500, and they still were able to make it work. It's a process. There's a new coach in Mike Brown, as we know. They're learning a new offense. They're learning his defensive principles. Some players are adjusting to new roles while trying to get healthy. That is Josh Hart and Mitchell Robinson, who we talked about earlier in this episode. So this is going to take time. I understand that sometimes the fans, particularly here in New York, do not have the patience. But there is continuity with this team. Their top 7 players are returning. There are some new bench pieces that are still trying to get acclimated. I think everyone has to just breathe easy and let this team develop. There's a lot of talent on this Knicks team. I don't know how it's going to end up. None of us know how it's going to end up. They have the talent to make it to the NBA Finals. Probably have enough talent to win it all. We'll see. But championships are not won in October or November. They're not won after 6 games. You have to try to enjoy the process and let this team get better as time goes on. Are there questions? Are there reasons for things defensively with certain players to be concerned about? Absolutely. But let's see how this all shakes up. Let's see what the process is like. And I don't think there's a really big need to worry about this Knicks team after 6 games. They're fine. We'll now have to watch and see if they get better. That's going to do it for this episode of New York Got Game. Got to thank all the people that make this show possible. Producer, Erica Block. Editor, Eduardo Guerrero. Production assistant, Tommy Cohen. Also technically directing, Heather Bonsignore. And production assistant, Jessica Thiesing. I'm Dexter Henry. We'll catch you next time in another edition of New York Got Game.
And thanks for watching New York Got Game. Boom shakalaka.